Alright, welcome back to another Daily Dose. It's time to learn about the fill tool. Finally. So the fill tool, that's of course this fill bucket right here, and if you click it, and then, well, it will just fill it with whatever the current main color is if you use the left, or the secondary color if you use the right button. So you can switch those. You can click left button here, right button here, and you get to choose different colors. So if you have this fill tool selected, right click will fill with the secondary color, and left click with the primary color. Now if there is anything in the way of filling it, that's when it gets interesting. So let's say for instance we use a tool, let's say for instance the hollow circle. Well, let's do the filled circle first. Okay, so here's the filled circle. Well, green on green we don't see much, so right button, let's use that. There's an oval, there's another one, and there's another one. Let's just miss it by a tiny little bit. So we now have a couple of shapes and we want to fill those. Alright, let's go fill it with yellow color. Pick the yellow. In fact, there's a couple of named colors we can choose here. Let's take this one, lemon yellow. Fill tool, fill it. Okay, that's easy enough. Now it goes all the way to wherever it stops being pink. Click on pink. There you go. Now let's say I'm picking a different one like blue, and I click here. Everything gets blue except for the yellow parts, because the moment the color is different, it stops spreading to that area. And that's basically how the fill tool works. So what happens if you actually don't have just one color? When we had just blue here and yellow, that's you know, it's all or nothing. It's a clear cut, and if you go in and zoom in there, you can see the jaggies. There is no anti-aliasing here in this case, so it's a clear cut. If you click on the yellow, it will find pixels, yellow, and then finally blue, and it stops. So you can assume it will do a pretty good job at filling this to whatever color you want. Undo that. But what happens if you have anti-aliasing, or if you have actually a gradient, or if you have some other colors there? Like for instance, if you smooth this, right? Let's go zoom in and apply a smooth filter like Gaussian blur. Let's go to blur, box filter, or Gaussian blur. What happens is that you now have other colors introduced. It's no longer just blue or yellow. You do have some shades of yellow to blue in between, and that is what allows you to make it a nice smooth transition. But that also is what makes the fill tool go a little bit berserk, because when you try to fill that, let's say now we pick the red color and we try to fill that yellow area with red, it's gonna stop at some point here because it doesn't see that it can go on. These yellow values are no longer the same as the prior yellow values. In fact, let's undo that and use the turkey baster or color picker. And when you do that, you can go around here. You do around here, you see the yellow values, red, green, and blue. They're all the same, but when you get close to the edge, they start changing, and then eventually they turn blue. Yellow, blue. See that? Look at what's happening over here with these colors. Yellow, blue. Now somewhere in between is the transition, but it's not a sudden jump. There are a couple of blue values before it goes into yellow, and kind of almost a greenish light green value there. So the fill tool of course is gonna stop. If we tell it to fill on the yellow, it's gonna go all the way to here until it finds the first pixel that's not the same yellow. Or if we tell it to start on the blue, same thing, it's gonna stop here because these blues are slightly different from the ones it started on. If you start on here, it may find a pixel or two that happen to have the same color, but then the neighboring ones immediately are different. Now you can adjust something to make it a little bit more forgiving on that, and that's called the tolerance. So one of the parameters with the fill tool is the tolerance value here. Give it more tolerance, and when you do that, it will say, okay, there's a couple of other colors that are similar in that blue that you clicked on. All right, let's go undo this a few times. Go back to the original. There you go. So let's take, for instance, the greenish emerald color, or maybe green, Prussian green. There. So I'm going to give it a little bit of tolerance, not as much as I had before, and I'm going to click right smack dab in the middle. See how it's picking a couple of pixels, not only one, but still not enough to make it the whole place around. And you would have to work with this to eventually find the whole circle around it, right? The problem though is that it's also making a very sudden stop, and it would be nice in a way if it could do a little bit more of a transition on that selection. That's the anti-alias mode, and so let's see what happens there. If I use, let's go undo that. If I use 0 tolerance but I enable anti-aliasing, it's not stopping at the 1 pixel, it's going a little bit beyond it. Okay, now if you go right in the middle here, that's yellow, but you see the transition has a couple of pixels fade from the green, and that's exactly where we want to be many times to make a much cleaner selection. For instance, now if you combine that with the tolerance, you can have a nice smooth transition, turn yellow, pick that up that way. Here's the orange, there's another one, there's still some green left there, but you can, one thing that you can also see is you can pick again and a few more times and gradually grow into the entire area. So that's one thing to know about the fill tool, is that it's important to play with that tolerance and possibly the anti-alias mode. Now there's a couple of different ways to fill it. When it comes to filling it, you can tell the fill setting on how to fill it. The plain color is what we had so far, so that would be the primary or the secondary color. Could be, for instance, this and this color, or this one. So we have the primary and we have the secondary color. Left button, right button. Well, we can also fill it with a pattern. There's a pattern fill. Now we need to have it in the brush. So there's actually a tool here called the patterns generator or the patterns chooser, and you can pick these patterns like this one here and then use that to fill, or pick these bricks and use that to fill. So that's another way to use the fill tool. That works really well if you have something like text and you want to fill it with that pattern. Right, so let's take that for instance. Where is it? Here's the text tool, and I'm going to go with the text tool right there, make it a little bit bigger, and let's see, what size do we want? Let's make it really large, 48, boldface. There you go, and say hello world. Right, and let's put that in fact into the alpha channel. You can fill it in a couple of ways, but let's put it into the alpha channel and then we will fill it. So we'll apply it. There you go. And if we need to shift it around a little bit, remember we can use the control and shift around, drag the alpha selection over a little bit. And so now we'll go with the fill tool, plain color fill. Make sure you use the fill tool, let's say violet. Pick it in here. That will fill just one of the letters because we don't give it much of the tolerance. The more you give it, the more it's going to try to break out, and in the end, if you go all the way to the maximum tolerance, it fills the entire area. But it still is going to be contained by the selection, in the sense that the rendering itself of that fill is going to be contained in there. Alright, so pattern fill, same thing. So you can have that pattern fill into the entire text string, and so that's a good way, a fairly easy way to put that text pattern or texture into the text string. And then of course you might want to add a little bit of a drop shadow or emboss by alpha, something like this, and it's sweet.